It is Sunday, September 8th, 2013, and we are doing our little alternative spiritual practice of protesting in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. And it went longer than expected as a result of a police intervention that went on for I don't know, 15 minutes or so, maybe 20 minutes. And then following that police intervention, I had a nice, interesting conversation with a young Unitarian Universalist about the issues who happened to be passing by. Not a member of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, not even a member of any congregation, according to her. But nonetheless, a young woman, I'd say under 20 or early 20s, who identifies as a Unitarian Universalist and does, in fact, work at a Unitarian Universalist summer camp. So I think, yeah, if you're working at a Unitarian Universalist summer camp as an employee and you consider yourself to be a Universalist, well then I'd say, yeah, you're a Unitarian Universalist, even if you're not a member of a congregation. There's, I think, some people that call themselves Unitarian Universalists when they're only very loosely affiliated with the church and should not be considered member of the church per se, but I think this woman's situation counts as a bona fide, Unitarian Universalist. So we're just going to keep this up, just recording what happens when people exit the church. There may be some interesting interactions, as we continue on. If I see John Inder or Patrina Lee Poi, I may say a thing or two to them because they were the ones that had that long chat with the police, and I'm sure they fed them a line of bullshit. In fact, according to what the police told me, they were told that that the church has tried to negotiate with me, which is simply, it's not really true. I mean, if you go back to 1998 or so, 1996, 1998, there were a few discussions that went nowhere. But since 1999, there's been absolutely no dialogue between me and the church, even though I've repeatedly asked the church to engage in dialogue with me towards the end of resolving this conflict. So essentially, John Inder and Patrina Lee Poi misrepresented the truth to the police. They misled them, and they also said that my demands were unreasonable. That I'm asking for things that are just totally unreasonable. The exact word that the police officer said was irrealist. Unrealistic in French. So the church is claiming that I'm making unrealistic demands, which again is simply not true. And if you go back to the early stages of this dispute, my demands were actually eminently reasonable. All I wanted was a retraction of the insulting and defamatory words of Reverend Ray Drennan and an apology that clearly recognized his wrongdoing and as I said, retracted, these statements. Well, that never happened, and instead the church tried very hard to silence me with various forms of intimidation and punishment. And so, they have not. They've actually refused to speak with me since 1999. And since that time, they've brought ridiculous criminal charges against me. They've called the police numerous times. I've lost count of the times that the police have come by to, they basically tried to shut this down with, the police giving me tickets and so on and so forth. So essentially, John Inder and Patrina Lee Poi, one or the other or both, misled the police about this situation because it is simply not true that there's been any dialogue for 13 years now, easily. It's 2013, and any dialogue ended in 1999, 2000. So that's, basically 13, 14 years where the Unitarian Church of Montreal have refused to engage in any kind of dialogue with me, in spite of repeated invitations to speak with me towards the end of resolving this conflict. And again, my demands, well now, they push things so far that, I have some demands that, maybe they will find unreasonable or unrealistic, but I don't think they're unrealistic or unreasonable at all. And I think they're actually very much in alignment with what the demands of other people in similar situations, have been. So, and I haven't even made any real demands, beyond the usual stuff in quite some time, so I really they don't they don't even know what they're talking about really, because what demands have I made beyond the quite reasonable ones that I made years and years and years ago. In fact, one of the demands I made comparatively recently, but not that recently, was in April of 2010. I went down to Boston, attended the board meeting, and sure you don't want to take a souvenir photo? It's not every day you see this in front of a Unitarian church. So this guy's got a professional level Nikon camera hanging off his shoulder and a Domke camera bag hanging off his other shoulder. So the guy's obviously a serious photographer. And he doesn't want to take a photograph of this protest in front of the Unitarian Church in Montreal. I guess he's a little biased, doesn't really want to remember this, I guess. Anyhow, getting back to what I was saying, during the April 2010 board meeting, which I attended, I had originally planned to protest, but it turned out to be Boston Marathon weekend, so I thought I could be more productive by attending the meeting and hopefully saying a thing or two, and I was able to say a thing or two. And of course it was totally ignored. But what happened is at one point I was able to have a brief chat with UUA President Reverend Peter Morales, and I asked him to reopen or to have the UUA reopen and re-examine my clergy misconduct complaints against Reverend Ray Drennan and Reverend Victoria Weinstein. That's all I asked. I said, just reopen and re-examine these complaints that I believe were mishandled. And he refused point blank to do so. His words, this is pretty well an exact quote, there might be some slight differences, but he said, we're not reopening something that's years and years and years old. Or he might have said, we're not reopening a case or cases. I don't think he did. I'm pretty sure he said something. We're not reopening something that's years and years and years old. Well, guess what? A few years later, the UUA administration actually did reopen things that were years and years and years old, but from the opposite tack. Instead of looking into my complaints to see, to what extent they were mishandled by the UUA reopened my complaints from the perspective that I was. C'est une église qui fait des bêtises, monsieur. Et si vous parlez de mes pancartes, ils sont loin d'être des conneries, monsieur. C'est l'église qui est coupable des conneries. Oui, l'ignorance, c'est typique. So the guy used the word connerie, and I don't know absolutely for sure. I might be able to check the tape or video to see what he actually said. It may pick up, what he actually said. But I don't know for sure if he was saying that my picket signs and my protests were connerie, but that's a typical response. Connerie basically means, bullshit, frivolous stuff, So he's basically, I can't say for sure because I didn't catch exactly what he said, but it looked like he was being very dismissive about my protest, and so I responded on that assumption and just made it clear that, you know, if that was the case, that in fact the the church is far more guilty of connery than I am. And actually, we're getting back. This actually works well with what I was saying about President Morales. You know, I had asked him in April of 2010 to ensure that my complaints against Reverend Ray Drennan and Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, which had been dismissed by the UUA when I made them, were reopened and re-examined, and hopefully the decisions were overturned because they were just plain wrong. But he, in June of last year, June 2012, after saying that, you know, he wouldn't reopen something that was years and years and years old, reopened the same kind of stuff, but from the perspective of trying to legally bully me into silence. And the biggest connery, if we want to use that term, was accusing me of the archaic crime of blasphemous libel for allegedly making unfounded and vicious allegations to the effect that ministers of the association engage in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. I mean, that is a connery on several levels. It's a connery because it's just, well, to start with, it's false. I never have made unfounded and vicious allegations. I've made entirely true allegations that are supported by newspaper reports, and what I've put on the internet cannot reasonably be described as vicious, true or not. In fact, the only vicious thing is the rapes themselves that I blogged about. So it's a connery on that level. But it's a connery also because even if I was making unfounded and vicious allegations about Unitarian Universalist ministers engaging in rape and pedophilia, this would not amount to blasphemous libel. Blasphemous libel is insulting the most deeply held religious beliefs of a religion, basically attacking what is sacred to a religion. So unless engaging in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape is sacred to Unitarians, I'm not engaging in blasphemous libel. Okay. So John, I hear you fed a line of bullshit to the police as usual, not you, John Inder. John Inder told the police that my demands are completely unreasonable. He also told the police that the church has spoken to me. Well, the church has refused to speak with me for over a decade now. So you, John, are what is known as a liar. And you lied to the police, and I suggest you refrain from doing so. So, just wanted to send a little message to John Inder about lying to the police. There's people showing up well after the service here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, I wonder, actually, I'm saying good afternoon, but it might still be morning. It's hovering around noon. We will check the time and see where we're at. Oh, look at that, noon on the button. So it is noon, high noon there, with a little duel of words with John Inder. So yes, little well-deserved confrontation with John Inder, president of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, quite justifiably accusing him of misrepresenting the truth to the police in a way that can be justifiably described as lying. He, according to what the police officers told me, claimed, that the church had tried to engage in dialogue with me, and also claimed that my demands were completely unreasonable, unrealistic. Well, yes, if you go back to, let's say, between 1996 and 1998-ish, there were some failed attempts at dialogue, and in fact the attempts that John was involved in, but other people were as well. But the point being is that since 1998 there has been no attempt to engage in dialogue with me towards the end of resolving this conflict. The church has repeatedly refused to engage in dialogue with me, in spite of the fact that I've repeatedly invited them to engage in dialogue with me, and even said I'm prepared to suspend this protest for a period of at least 2 months, and it can be extended as long as they agree to enter into dialogue with me towards the end of resolving the conflict. You know, that can basically, the suspension of the protest can continue as long as the dialogue is going well and we're making progress. So it could potentially lead to a complete end to the protest. But no, you know, John Inder and other previous presidents of the church have received that invitation to dialogue and have refused to engage in dialogue with me, you know, and here he is telling the police, you know, oh, we've tried very hard to speak to Mr. Edgar. And you know, the other thing is, you know, claiming that my demands are unrealistic. Well, no, I mean, I haven't really made a whole lot of demands other than that they acknowledge their wrongful behavior and apologize and you know, reinstate, you know, like overturn bad decisions. That's all I've been asking for, is like, you know, you have to overturn all the bad decisions you made, which I don't think is unrealistic, or, well, yeah, it might be. It might be unrealistic in terms of a incredibly hypocritical religious community that is totally allergic to acknowledging wrongdoing. I suppose in that sense, asking Unitarian Universalists to acknowledge their sins of commission and their sins of omission and try to make amends could be seen as unrealistic. Maybe that's what John Inder was trying to say.